I think that the most memorable thing when I went back to a reunion one time was we were not very many of us going. I think there's only, even now, there's only about 13 of my class left. And at that time there were more. And we were sitting around talking one night, and one of the boys came up to me and he says, Pat, he was in a class behind me. I graduated in 50, he graduated in 51. He said, Pat, he said, I knew that you were from Sedona, but I did not know that that was your grandmother. And I said, well, Mike, when did you find that out? And he said, well, Dad has a little place down there now, and he told me. I said, Mike, I knew you were Mike Adams, but I didn't know your dad was Ansel. This is the type of kids there were there. Nobody was any better than anybody else. We all did our jobs. We all worked. We all treated each other as equals, and we had a wonderful relationship because of it. My dad was kind of satirical in the thing. He was never unkind, never mean, but he would have funny nicknames for people. There was an old timer named Roe Smith, and Daddy called him Fish Egg Smith. We didn't know anything. We didn't know Roe was his name. It was Fish Egg Smith. And there was a postmaster that was Mrs. Tanner, and she had the raspiest voice. She was so funny. She was efficient, and then we got the mail twice a day, and our automobile just automatically stopped at the post office every time you went by it. I don't think you could drive it anywhere without it going by the post office and stopping there. That was Daddy, and he would always say, "Well, Squeaky Smith is in." Squeaky Tanner is in there. She was still working tonight, and that pleased him because he thought everybody ought to put in their full hours. But it was Squeaky Tanner, and he liked Mrs. Tanner, and he never had any complaints about Mrs. Tanner, and we all called her Mrs. Tanner. But to him, it was Squeaky Tanner. I was one of the lucky college girls that had a roommate with a car, and because there were not 20 cars on campus, I don't think, at that time. Nobody had a car, but my roommate was from St. Louis, Missouri, and she came here in a red convertible. And so Alice brought me down to the funeral and stayed with us till we could go back. And the Grandma's funeral was at Wayside Chapel, as that was her being. She loved that chapel, and she helped do it, and she helped do anything. There's an organ there that was dedicated to her in her name, although Grandma did not play the organ, she played the piano. And then the bell in the bell tower. We had been hunting for a bell in the bell tower, and there was not a bell. And my Uncle Hank in Denver, which was her Grandma's second son, my dad's younger brother, found in Denver, and it was to be shipped, and so that we could put it at the Wayside Chapel. And of course, we knew that it had been found then, but had not been erected. So on Mother's Day, following her death, the bell was up, dedicated, and Grandpa and Daddy rang it the first time. And I'm sure that Grandma was up there helping it resonate through the entire canyon while the bell at Wayside Chapel was dedicated to her. She had to have a church and had to have a service and had to do this. And after the Sunday school after the school burned down on Brewer Road, they didn't have it. That's where they held their services every Sunday. It was in their community room. And after that, she didn't have a place. So the Assembly of God offered them their hall to have services in until they could get this one built. It was nice, and I remember going out because she was buried out at the Pioneer Cemetery.
Where is that?
The Pioneer Cemetery is out on Airport Road, just below the Elks thing, and that's where Little Pearl's grave was moved. When they took it from the homestead place down on the creek at Occupocky, they moved it out there, and they moved that out there, I think, quite a time before Grandma and Grandpa died. I do know they moved it out there early, probably when they came back in 1921, whatever that was, because during the war, Grandma and Grandpa went out there on her birthday, on Pearl's birthday, and on her death day, and of course on Memorial Day. And when Dad was here, of course, he would take them out to do that. During the war, they walked out from their little home down there where the parking lot is with water, a can of water, and fresh flowers to put on little Pearl's grave. That was how dedicated. I'm sure there would have been somebody to take them, but they didn't. They didn't ask. I think it was kind of like a pilgrimage to them. It's in honor of this little girl. It was gorgeous. But we didn't have snow festivals then. What a wonderful time. We could have made all the snow sculptures in the world, and nobody did it. It was not a thing that we did. We did have other events that were fun, and I enjoyed skiing. At that time, I didn't have great skis, but I did have friends that skied, and we could always go to the Snow Bowl, which didn't have the lifts that they have now and the wonderful runs that they had now. But I did very well. That was a fun time, and we did a lot of skiing. I did a lot of things that year.
If they didn't have lifts, how did you get up to do any skiing?
There was one small lift that went a little bit, but you walked up the mountain, carried your skis, and you skied down. And yeah, they did have a lift that went up, kind of like what the bunny trail is now. I was always scared of the lift, though. I could never get on. And to this day, I have not been up. We walked and carried our skis up and came back down. You could only make 2 or 3 trips a day, but that's all right. That was